Thank you very much. It's actually a good thing that I'm having this event a few months after my real Dienstantritt, my official Dienstantritt, because I can now more truthfully and with greater awareness say how happy I am to be here. I'm very proud of having been selected for this position, and I'm really, as was mentioned, happy in being in such a place. I thank all the colleagues and friends that welcomed me here. It has been mentioned that I've been connecting with people, but of course I was helped, I was supported, and I was welcomed by many people. And of course, Herr Rector, and of course Waltraud and Wolfgang, thank you very much for your nice words. The second reason why this is a very good time to have this talk is, of course, because the topic that I thought I would bring to you is of a festive nature. It's a semi-serious talk in which I will try to bring together my research interests and try to connect them with those in the department and in the faculty. For those of you who may be puzzled by the title, a rule of thumb may be just substitute Englishes for Christmases. Because what I'm trying to do here is to say something about language variation and change and my research interests through the analysis of a cultural phenomenon, that is, Christmas, which spreads and has won our hearts, our pockets, our civilization, much in the same way as English has done, in a way. And these topics that I'm going to deal with are visible already in the title, in a way, because there was a real revolution when the word English was first pluralized into Englishes. In fact, even to this day, your spelling checkers on your computers do not accept this pluralization. Certainly, it's quite centrifugal, it's revolutionary. Can we still speak of one English? Or can we still speak of one Christmas? The phenomenon itself of Christmas is, of course, the result of acceptation. In linguistics, that's the reanalysis of material that isn't then put to new use. It comes, of course, from the Saturnalia. In Roman times, these holidays were meant to represent a time of peace, the exchange of gifts, and the release of slaves. It's also connected with the cults of the Sol Invictus in Rome and with the Mithraic cult. But there are also origins hypothesized within the Germanic and Jewish Middle European area. So, like many things in language, the origins are disputed. Anyway, even the dates, the first dates of celebration vary across scholars. People generally talk about the 3rd to the 5th century AD. But then, of course, there was quite rapid standardization of the phenomenon, unprecedented diffusion. For many, undoubtedly, and you can look at the picture, it's a standard representation of this phenomenon. For many, certainly the result of cultural imperialism. And this gives me the opportunity to mention linguistic imperialism, a notion that was introduced in the early 1990s in linguistics, and that is a high interest of mine. To the extent that today we could speak of a global Christmas, or Christmas as a festa franca, But not without resistance. Scotland, a notorious case for resistance, I would say, has only yielded to official recognition of Christmas in the 1960s. Before that, it was Yuletide and New Year that were more prominently celebrated. Of course, this is not to mean that variation and change do not apply to this phenomenon, and we will see some aspects of this. Here you see a traditional native iconic representation, but the phenomenon rapidly shows signs of localization. Localization is the next step in the development of a local variety, when the variety of English starts to get local features influenced by maybe the native language of the place or other phenomena. Here, as you can see, this is a visual form of localization, but we could also look at a textual form of localization. First of all, in the slogan, influenced by the pronunciation in Hawaiian, which is, of course, a Polynesian language. When traditional Christmas settings are mentioned, Hawaii might be the last place to come to mind. In the Aloha state, you won't find thick blankets of snow, that is, unless you head to lofty summit of Mauna Kea on the Big Island, and you won't experience popsicle-like temperatures. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. In Hawaii, there aren't many homes with fireplaces. Can Christmas really be Christmas in Hawaii? Yes, it can. Hawaii residents begin putting up their holiday lights and Christmas trees as soon as the last piece of Thanksgiving turkey is gobbled. There are joyous Christmas concerts, community parades, and dazzling displays throughout the state. You see how in this text the identity of the cultural phenomenon is claimed in spite of variation. This happens very often when a new variety of English starts to be acknowledged. There are texts in the press by linguists saying, yes, okay, there is variation, but this is still English. It is still an official form of English. The first celebration of Christmas in Hawaii, by the way, dates back to 1786. It was declared an official holiday in 1856. And the first appearance by Santa Claus was 2 years later, 1858. You see in this text that there is still some reference to a norm. This is what in linguistics we call exonormative. That is, you still look for the norm outside your own locality. So there is localization of the variety, okay, we do concerts, we put up lights, but there is also a reference. The reference is still to the original norm. It's, in other words, the variation is measured in terms of deviation from a standard. The next step is nativization. Now, here you can see something completely different. The image has changed completely. And let's now look at the text. The message that Christmas brings to mankind is near and dear to the hearts of the Fijian people. It is a message of peace, understanding, respect, caring, and sharing of all good fortune. And these are things which Fijians honor every day of their lives, not just once a year. It's also lovo time for most Fijian families. Simply put, a lovo is an underground oven where an entire feast is cooked over hot rocks while buried in earth. What does this text say? This is what in literary criticism, and I may recall here that post-colonial literature is one of the main research interests in the department, would call appropriation. That is, not only variation is recognized, in this case, the lovo, but it is also claimed as a main feature of the event, as appropriate to the event, and as belonging to the event. So in spite of the visual representation, which is everything but we stereotypically associate with Christmas, there is a claim here to the fact that Christmas can be associated with certain values that belong to the other populations. This is typical of the process of nativization in varieties of English, where the variety gets acknowledged as a legitimate variety belonging to a culture, and not just as the reflex of colonization. The next step in this cycle is institutionalization, that is, considering the variety as totally integrated into the new culture, with the consequent marketization. This picture was taken in a shopping mall in New Delhi. In India, about 1,730,000 websites are built around the event of Christmas, for instance. And the marketization of the English language, of course, is something that is very well known, should always be at the forefront of our minds. We should never forget that the teaching and the spread of English is also big business. Now, the text here says, like elsewhere in the world, so there is this claim to globalization. December 25th is celebrating in India too as the Nativity of Jesus Christ, with traditional joy and gaiety. In fact, it cuts across the limits of the church to spill over into the streets for all to participate. It is a time for merrymaking and exchanging gifts. As we saw, this is a very old feature. The marketplaces are all embellished with tinsel and buntings, and people masquerading as Santa stall customers, particularly children with gifts in the big cities. Decorated and glittering Christmas trees are all over the place. Why so many websites in India, for instance? Like English, or better, as it is often claimed for English, Christmas is one of these cultural features that has managed to acquire a so-called bridge function. That is to bring together people from different ethnic groups. It is also a time of reunion. For example, if you take the trouble to check websites on Christmas for Nigeria, you will find that the most prominent feature is not so much gifts and decorations, but coming home, traveling to the home place. So different values, localized values, are associated with this phenomenon, and also this bridge function that in multilingual countries where English has come as a colonial language is still considered to be very important. But now, let's go to something that has to do more strictly with the language itself. Our first step will be considering re-semanticization of Christmas. First of all, in documents, in texts, we find a switch from a date, Christmas is a date, to a period of time. In the first occurrences, this concerns only the time after Christmas, but then also the time before Christmas, that is, the time in which we are now, Advent. The connotations, as in older times, are peace, exchanging visits. A little later we find references to payments due at Christmas, but we'll come back to that. And also special products, special types of bread, and also special types of candles. There is, in fact, evidence that churches increase their expenses for wax considerably during Christmas time. Let us therefore look at some textual evidence of this resemanticization. The first one is from a letter of the late 15th century, written in haste on St. Thomas' Day in Christmas by your Margaret Basson. That already refers to the whole period rather than a single day. The second example is from the Mort d'Arthur, a very well-known manuscript, but Sir Gawain jousted there all that Christmas rather well. So you see it refers to the whole period of time. The third one is from an official document, the guild's certificates that were promulgated in the late 14th and 15th centuries in major cities. Guilds of merchants, artisans, and other kinds of brotherhoods. Also, that no servants go to get their offerings, to get their gratuities, on Christmas Day. So this is punctual, on the other hand, only on Christmas Day. Or gather any fees from citizens or strangers in other times. And here we come with the candles. Also, this is from the Three Kings of Cologne, also a rather well-known document. Also, they lit a candle or a lamp, and that shall burn night and day from Christmas to the 12th night. So you see now why expenses were so high at this time. There is also another type of resemanticization of the term. That is from holy day to holiday, and from fasting to feasting. Now, linguistically, they seem like very, very tiny changes, but conceptually, they are revolutions. Let me just mention there are still islands, there are still exceptions to this. For instance, in the Orthodox Church, the time of Christmas is still a time of fasting. Now, in the south of Italy, where we come from, there is quite a lot of feasting, but there is a sort of compromise with the church because we only eat fish on Christmas Eve. That's the only non-vegetable allowed. Now, let's look at some textual evidence for these changes. The first example is from the Rule of St. Francis, a medieval version, English version of that document. In St. Martin's Land, until Christmas Day, and from the Sunday of Lent till Easter Day, they must fast every day except Sundays. So you see that in the 12th and early 13th century, this is still the case. But in the Mirror of the Blessed Life of Jesus Christ, 1410, this is the manuscript we have, and furthermore, as the worldly men make bodily mirth in this time of Christmas. This refers to secular pleasures that had started to gain over the spiritual pleasures, obviously. And even earlier, in the Canterbury Tales, we find this line, "At Christmas, much may you dance." So the feasting had already started by then. Until we come to the last example, also from the 15th century, talking about a lady who held a feast upon Christmas Day in her neighborhood, both far and near, until her hall was full of them. She invited everyone. This switch from fasting to feasting is supposed to have originated to create a relative safety from enemies. So it was a period of peace, a period of truce, so that people could indulge a little bit in enjoying life being sure that the enemies would not attack at that time. This kind of gliding into revelry as opposed to spiritual celebration was apparently opposed by the church, but to no avail, to the extent that very soon Christmas also became a time of misrule, even with the appointing of so-called boy bishops, that is, even making fun of the church to some extent. What were the main aspects of this feasting, and still are to a great extent? Well, first of all, decorations and trying to show off to other people, whence the popular expression, dressed like Christmas beef, which means really dressed up with all the trimmings. Dancing and shows, of course, and we could here mention mummings, which are still, as you can see, this is a very modern picture of a reenactment, still quite a feature in the English-speaking world, but also very old. This is again from the guild's certificates, so late 14th, early 15th century, that no manner of person, of whatever degree or social condition they be, at no time this Christmas, meaning the period, go a-mumming with a closed visage, that is, with masquerading with a mask. So it was nearly like a carnival in some way. And of course, nativity plays. Now, as was kindly mentioned in the introduction, religious plays of the late Middle Ages have been a large interest of mine. They are extremely interesting to analyze from a conversational point of view. The dialogues are very lively. These productions were really huge for the size of towns at the time. The city, not the church, but the city put a lot of effort and a lot of money into producing these plays. Not only that, but the dialogues, at least those that we have left, and we have quite a number of collections, appear sometimes to be really speech-like. That is, they tend to mimic the quality of speech, of common everyday speech. So it's very interesting to study them. Whence the common expression, as good as a Christmas play, mean something very enjoyable. Other aspects, of course, were toasts, drinking, and present giving, but only in the late Middle English time we find evidence of this exchange of presents. But one aspect that we find very prominent is food. At a banquet that Henry VIII gave in 1426, the following were consumed. Rainer, close your, shut your ears. 5,000 chicken, 1,100 partridges, 400 hares and rabbits, 10,000 eels, 36 swans, 54 peacocks, and 90 boars. Sorry about that. Whence the common expressions, after Christmas comes Lent. You have to give your stomach a rest. And busy as an oven at Christmas, of course. Now, something about the word itself, the word Christmas. This is found already in the Old English Chronicle. We have a manuscript from the 11th century, but of course we know that part of it are older. There is an older form, Christenmass, that is found especially in the northern texts. And there are, as you can see, many variants. The last two are also typical of northern dialects, and I should not certainly specify that English dialects have been and are an interest at the department quite authoritatively. You can see here the kind of processes, linguistic processes that take place, assimilation of consonants, reduction of consonant clusters in the last two. The T has gone, for instance, and also metathesis in the last one, where the R is, of course, in a different place. Some evidence for word formation and the kind of derivatives and the kind of collocations that the word goes into. This is also a very prominent interest in the department, in the faculty, interest in words, in making dictionaries. So I thought I would include some of the information. The information is, of course, from the Oxford English Dictionary, which is the monumental work that is our main reference for this kind of information. First of all, some derivation of the word. There was an adjective Christmasly, meaning proper to the season of Christmas, but then it was discarded. For today, Christmassy is preferred. Christmasly, however, was also an adverb, only once. A nonce formation for the non-linguist is something you only find attested once. And this is interesting for us because it shows how sometimes word formation and the creation of new words are experimented on. So there are individual speakers or writers or journalists who try to create new derivatives by using different kinds of suffixes or materials, and then sometimes they don't catch up, they get discarded, and it may be just a question of luck sometimes, meaning every Christmas. There is also evidence for conversion, that is zero derivation, changing the grammatical form of the word without changing the grammatical meaning of the word without changing its form. Use as a verb to celebrate in the 1880s, and also as an interjection used by Kipling, Jiminy Christmas. Something more specific on meaning shift, because of course sometimes the form of a word is very stable, but the meaning may change considerably over time. Excuse me. There is evidence of the word being transferred to other festivities. Look at this example, 1697. Privateers who resort either in the aforesaid months, and the months are May to August, purposely to keep a Christmas, as they call it, so extending the meaning to other celebrations. Or refer to decorations. This is nursery language, that is baby language, and also dialectal. This is an example from the late 19th century from the Cheshire glossaries, but of course in most dialect glossaries, the OAD says, this kind of extension of the meaning is current. But the most interesting aspect is, of course, compounds. Let's look at some of them. Christmas box for gratuities, Christmas pudding, Christmas card, interestingly also used in Cockney's rhyming slang for a guard, Christmas log in the chimney, and Christmas book, where you used to record all the presents you received. But mostly it concerns plants. Christmas daisy, the Aster grandiflorus, the Christmas rose, Christmas herb, and Christmas flower. There is also evidence for localization here. Christmas pride, Ruelia paniculata, is only typical of Jamaica. And as you can see, Christmas fern or shield fern is from North America, and Christmas bush is from Australia and Bermuda. But the most widespread compound is certainly the Christmas tree. And the Christmas tree was first recorded as a compound in 1789. It was later extended to a military order. That is, there is a special type of military formation that you can call a Christmas tree. At the beginning of the 20th century, it started to indicate a mechanical device. It's a sort of plug that has other bits appended to it, so it does resemble a Christmas tree in a way. And in America, it can also refer to a bill of Congress with some extra clauses appended to it. So there are some common features that lead to these meaning changes. Whence the expressions lit up like a Christmas tree, meaning drunk, and I didn't fall off a Christmas tree, meaning I have more sense than that. Here too in this compound we have signs of localization. For instance, in Australia, the first attestation of the compound is 1867, and this is what you get. Nuitia floribunda, the Western Australian Christmas tree, which of course flourishes in summer. And here we could open a little excursus on the imperialistic practice of renaming reality. This is the object of a lot of debate, the fact that new realities that colonizers encountered in their discoveries were renamed by deviation, by approximation to their original, as known in the mother country, let's say so. A number of compounds are created with false. Interestingly, this started with naval terminology, so it's not really connected to imperialism as such at the beginning, but very quickly it goes to denote something that is not the real thing, because the real thing is only in Europe. And then in the New World, you only find some approximation. It's the kind of centric discourse that we are used to. Many compounds with Indian, of course, some very early, as you can see, and they refer to both West Indian and East Indian, of course. As you can see, tobacco and beberussa are, of course, features of Central America and Southern America, while bamboo and hemp are more typical of Eastern India. And, of course, mostly for toponyms, we have new, the recreation of European world in the new land. Okay, now quickly to pragmatics. Pragmatics is another of my fields of interest. Here I'm really playing around a little bit with language. I first thought I could look at Christmas as a pragmatic marker of power and solidarity. This is a scale of distance and intimacy in conversation. So I looked at a few examples in which Christmas was used as a deadline, something to be feared, to be imposed, or as setting the common ground. Both the examples are from the Morte d'Arthur. So the Archbishop, by following the advice of Merlin, sent for all the lords and gentlemen of arms that they should come by Christmas to London. The other one is about a present full of precious stones embroidered with their beards, which they sent him to have his love for salvation of their people at the last Christmas. In the same way, linguistic elements can have different values in communication. Anyway, this approach didn't look so promising, so I switched to considering Christmas as orientation device. That is, used to contextualize speech acts. Used as a turning point. There is before Christmas, there is after Christmas. So the first two, again, are from the Morte d'Arthur. Thus, it went on until Christmas. So that after Christmas, King Arthur called to him many knights. You see, this is either before or after that. Or at Christmas, insomuch that at Christmas, barley begins to have ears and to grow ripe. The last one is from the Paston Letters. My lady shall come on pilgrimage into this town, but he knows not, he doesn't know, whether before Christmas or after. And there are certainly some modern reflexes of this. We all know the sad expression, all over by Christmas, which was a slogan in the Second World War, is supposed to have originated in the American Civil War and was also employed in the Korean War to mean that the war will stop soon. And of course, in World War I, Berlin by Christmas was quite a common slogan, confirming the importance of this turning point in the year. Now, through reanalysis, we could say the expression goes on to become a modality device. It is associated with modal expressions to indicate especially forms of obligation. And here we come to the payments, because much of this is about money, money that is due at Christmas with various degrees of strength. These examples are all from letters, a very interesting collection, the Paston letters from the 15th century, very important because they have both personal and business letters. I pay you provided I may have more money by Christmas Eve at the latest. The second is a bit stronger, and I might have paid him a year ago, as well as I trust I shall soon after Christmas. I would not have broken him so many promises as I have. Or, even stronger, this must be paid between Michaelmas and Christmas. And even stronger, you see the expansion of the forms accompanying the expression to be paid again without delay by the feast of Christmas next, following the date of this letter. Through further reanalysis, one could say the expression turns into a marker of futurity. And here I'm going to look a bit into prognostications. Attributed to the prophet Ezra, they are present already from Old English and in several versions. Let's look at some of them. This is from a Middle English manuscript, the first one, Harley 2252. If Christmas Day is on a Sunday, you will have a troubled winter. Now you can imagine my reaction when I read this, because this year, Christmas is going to be on a Sunday, and it's my first winter, as kindly mentioned, away from the Mediterranean Sea. So I'm very worried. These were also widespread in Latin. For instance, the example here is from a 15th century manuscript in the British Museum. Si dies natalis Domini in die Dominica venerit, iem serit bona quadragesima ventosa, estas sicca, vites erunt bone, oves multiplicabuntur, et sane in illo anno erunt. Pax erit, mel erit, et homines senes morientur. A little more optimism. Now, for an English version of this, because these kinds of things circulated widely across Europe, I've chosen a late Middle English version by John Metham, a Yorkshireman, who also wrote a treatise on palmistry. He was interested in everything that had to do with divining the future. If Christmas Day fall upon a Sunday, the year following should prove under this form. The winter following should be full of winds. Whence the common expressions, cold as Christmas, and Christmas compliments, which is a way to denote a cough. But the summer should be fair and dry. Great peace should be that year in every land. That year there should be great abundance of vines. He that is born that day should be lucky to the world and live long in prosperity. So this is indeed more encouraging for this year. So I thought then that I would like to conclude, because I'm stretching it a bit too far now, I realize, with a Christmas carol. Christmas cannot be Christmas in the English-speaking world without Christmas carol. This is a medieval one. Make we merry, both high and low, for now is the time of Christmas. Let no man come into this hall, be he a groom, a page, or a marshal, unless he brings some fun. For now is the time of Christmas. If he says he cannot sing, let him bring some other fun. That may please us at this feasting, for now is the time of Christmas. If he says he can do nothing, then for the love of me, don't do anything else, but let him go to the stokes, because now is the time of Christmas. And you can see a nice picture of the stokes here. Take this, please, as an invitation to celebrate. There is a nice celebration offered by the university and the faculty outside. I hope you enjoy this, and thank you, and of course, Merry Christmas.